One of the most important things is that you have to test your software with very inexperienced users and look at the mistakes that they're going to make and take those mistakes really seriously. The things that are just going to cause them to pause or ask a question or be confused. If you can't handle the easy stuff, then you're doing something wrong. Keep it simple. Bottom line, you have to be very careful not to, as they say, suck all the air out of the room. You know, the CEO walks in and he blurts out some idea of the day and everybody's like, okay, we got to do that, right? So you have to be careful not to whimsically just drive people in a direction or to have a team that overemphasizes your own thoughts. I do believe in roadmaps. I also believe in tearing them up. In HawkSearch, that we want to make in that instance quarterly releases for the next 3 releases for the rest of this year. We have specific things that are being worked on, that we have deadlines. Nothing ever gets done if you don't have a deadline. We have public commitments at the appropriate part of time. But especially today, if you're not bold and can't, throw away a product or a roadmap and say, that someone passed us and we got to catch up over in this direction now, you're going to end up going off a cliff.
Hello, Ari.
Yuri, thank you for having me today.
Let me introduce our guest, Ari Kahn, the bright AI expert who is not only a doctor in computer science and artificial intelligence, but also launched quite a few products, and many of them are using AI. So today our topic would be about the future of AI in products, about building teams that can build successful AI products, and also many other things we will chat today. My name is Yuri. We are running podcasts with Anastasia that she is not available today, but we run Site and Design Agency and talk with bright minds who are on the intersection of product management, vision, and product design. So welcome, Ari. Maybe a few words about yourself. What are you doing now?
Well, thank you, Yuri. So my background is computer science since I was 10 years old with a Timex Sinclair with 2K of memory. And over the years, that's been my passion. That and mathematics also. Ended up with a PhD in artificial intelligence, started my first software company in 1996, FatWire. That was one of the first marketing technology companies, content management. We sold that to Oracle. After that, did a couple of other projects, including even ventured off into real estate in the Caribbean for a while, and invested in and ultimately became the CEO for Bridgeline. And AI, since I was doing AI back in the 90s to today, more has happened in the last 24 months than in the last 24 years. And the playing field has been leveled where small companies with great ideas can use AI as an infrastructure and release products in rapid succession that are tailor-made for their specific customers. And that's exactly what we're doing, where we're focused on improving our customers' online revenue by increasing their traffic, increasing their conversion rate, and increasing their average order value. And artificial intelligence, especially large language models and vector databases, are allowing us to release products very quickly. We just released Zeus, our latest smart search version, and it's receiving great responses, making an impact for our customers.
Awesome. So maybe we can start with quite a few short questions just to make the audience more familiar with you.
Great.
So maybe you can share what books influenced you, and do you recommend people to read, or you basically recommend just to start to do something as fast as possible?
Well, I actually do have a book, and it's not a computer science book, but I've got like 20 copies of it. I've given it to everyone, from my brother to Danielle, our VP of marketing. They've got multiple copies in the office over here. It's a great writing book called, now I'm blanking on the name. Darn, I can't remember the name. All right, I'm gonna have to get that back for you.
What is your favorite product from user experience perspective? What would be your inspiration for your products?
Well, I think that frankly, and this might be a little bit of a cliche, ChatGPT, easy to use, makes a big impact right out of the gate.
Do you have a favorite quote?
No single one of us can be as dumb as all of us together.
Cool. That's a deep quote. What about feedbacks from users? Did you get any specific feedbacks that you remember till now?
Keep it simple. Bottom line.
If you decided you would want to switch roles in your company, you're bored to be a CEO, which role would you take for yourself?
Definitely product management.
Why?
That's where the creativity really is. CEO can become administrative.
What makes you motivated in your job? What makes you wake up in the morning and still do your job? Because you're the person who is already successful. You could retire perhaps and just go to the beach and live there. What makes you still want to do your job?
I love problem solving. And when you are working with large customer base, you see lots of different problems. You can find commonalities between all of them and solve that one problem and make an impact on 100 customers at once.
If you imagine distant future, everything is possible. AI can build any product that you can imagine, like maybe from some books, from fiction movies. What kind of product you would love to build first for yourself, for humans?
I think that in the future, the product that I would love the most is the one that creates amazing experiences for you and your family.
Wow, that's cool. What's the most valuable lesson you learned in your career? And what would be the most important advice for yourself, younger, maybe 20 years ago?
You have to take chances. You don't need to know the solution. Just move in that direction, figure it out.
Don't be afraid, yeah?
Don't be afraid. Exactly. And by the way, failure is the best teacher.
Thanks. That was cool. Okay, maybe we should move forward with longer questions, longer answers. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about your product.
Well, Smart Search can increase revenues by up to 22% for an online store. And it does this because it has a few different core components. The first one is concept search. The second one is image search. And the third one is generative AI. On the concept search side, unlike a traditional online store where you type the product that you're searching for, you can just type the goal that you have. I want to go hiking. I want to throw a party, and it will automatically make recommendations that help you achieve that goal. On the image side, you're able to, for example, if you're, working on a tractor engine, just pull out your cell phone, take a picture of the engine. It'll identify all the parts, if any of them happen to be broken, and put those in your shopping cart, even if you don't know the name of that part in the first place. And on the generative side, able to recognize when you have holes in your own product catalog, maybe certain products have out-of-date images or are missing images altogether, or don't have descriptions, or are missing certain attributes, and automatically figure out what that image should be, what the description should be, and so forth, and fill in those gaps so that your product catalog is more complete for a better user experience. None of that was really possible a year ago. And we released this in Zeus just last week and have it making impacts for companies as big as Hewlett-Packard today.
Yeah, that's nice. What do you think about AI agents? Do you think they will also help with this kind of use cases? Because one of the things we are experimenting a lot, that agents that can go online, search missing data, and just provide you everything. Because one of the biggest problems for even e-commerce is to find information to fill into the database, to enrich it and personalize to users.
Agents are the next step in human-machine interfaces. Today, we're interacting with all sorts of websites directly, and there's a lot of actual human time and knowledge that's required in order to even do something like go shopping. You have to know which sites to go to and so on. Instead, we're going to have custom agents that will have knowledge as to what our different payment methods are, coupons, which sites to find different products for, and they'll do the shopping for us. They'll be able to anticipate what we need, so we don't need to tell it every time we want to go to the store. And there's going to be seller agents as well, and a whole ecosystem between the sell side agent and the buy side agent. And there'll be actual social norms that end up on the internet. And this is not 10 years out. This is just, I mean, it's actually happening today in the B2B space, and it's going to be very common in just a year or two.
So you think in the future B2B agents will be negotiating terms together, like AI agents just exchange emails on pricing and quantities and quality and everything, and then you just get an email that contract is ready to be signed?
I 100% believe that that is going to be happening. You'll have negotiations happen on both sides. And what's interesting is that there will also be more sophisticated and bulk negotiations where your buyer agent will know that, okay, well, I need this now, but I'm going to need something else in the future and so on, and can negotiate bundles of purchases and timings for deliveries and so forth. That would be really too sophisticated for us as individuals to negotiate. And the sell side agent will do the same thing. And all of that will tie into inventory on the sell side, and they'll be able to have predictive analytics to provide even better inventory. And it's going to become critical for just-in-time delivery to have last mile inventory, micro warehouses. And the only way you can pull that off is with sell side agents.
Ari, you mentioned that this kind of agent will be able to do shopping on different websites. Is it a risk for lots of e-commerce founders that some big players like Google could build a product that will just eliminate all e-commerce websites, or like Amazon, and if it's not in their website, they will just buy it for you somewhere else?
Yeah, it is going to be a risk. And between now and then, a couple of things that we need to be aware of. First of all, your site itself needs to be agent friendly. The easiest way to do that is actually to just follow the accessibility guidelines like the American Disability Act and so forth, to ensure that you have the appropriate metadata with schema.org and annotations for images and so forth, so that a blind person could access your site. That will allow Google to index it better. So today you'll have better SEO, but also for agents to be able to more easily navigate your own site. Ultimately, you do have this risk of things consolidating. And this is not unrelated to what's happened in the D2C, direct-to-consumer area, where B2B businesses are knocking out distributors and selling direct to their endpoints rather than indirectly through a distributor. And if you have a mega sales agent like Amazon and everyone just becomes D2C, then we as individuals need to start thinking in terms of where we want to work. You really want to work at the beginning of the chain in the manufacturing side of the world, rather than in the middleman part where it becomes automated and potentially consolidated with a couple of major players.
Yeah, that's interesting. What changes do you see for search engine optimization? Because I think it's also huge. There are a lot of dynamically generated content. And I think in one of your podcasts, you mentioned that one of your products is also focusing on that generation of the pages. Do you think that in future you will be mostly using interfaces like Perplexity or ChatGPT, and it will just generate the website for us on ad hoc? Or like, because I know that at the beginning you started with your own CMS system.
Yeah.
And it's like a natural evolution of a CMS system. But now you're not just providing the content, you can provide some databases, information, and prompts, and it will generate the content at the end that's super personalized per person that have a need. Maybe they even don't need to visit the website.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the companies are going to have to think more about what their business terms are, the competitive advantage, and their target audience. And the site will be largely generated for them, or the site won't exist at all, and they'll just be RESTful APIs or some lower level access to that information that an agent is browsing and shopping automatically for. And the more creative part, and this can be automated also with AI because everything intellectual can, will be deciding, okay, which products am I going to release? How will they be presented? What's my total addressable market, and what's my ideal customer profile? Those types of business concepts, pricing and bundling and so forth, will be more critical. And things like building the website will become less creative and more automated.
You are definitely in the area of very fast innovation. And how do you work with your team? So the team is on the edge of this innovation, that they're not missing the opportunities. Because what I see from the market in general, with people with whom I talk, even with clients, with inquiries that come to us, mostly everybody wants what's already exists in other products or super similar. Like, we need a chatbot to integrate into our system, or we need to generate emails from prompt. But the vision for something new is mostly limited for most teams, I guess, or they are not willing to take this risk, and they are just waiting for some guidelines, like material design guidelines for Android many years ago, how to use this AI in their products, and then they will just implement it. But in this kind of innovation time, it's very crucial to be on the edge, to test new ideas first that can open huge opportunities. How do you do it in your team?
Well, that's a really great point. You can't be feature chasing to your competition, because this is greenfield research right now. And one of the most important ways, so if you think about product management needs to listen to customers, listen to competitors, listens to your own engineering team, listen to your sales team, what's going to win deals, but also needs to be able to abstract everything that it hears in such a way that it can find out what the real core need is and consolidate all of that. What we're actually doing tomorrow morning, we have an internal meeting at Bridgeline, and where I'm going to announce a contest internally where every single department, even finance, support, engineering, all is going to have, every person's going to have their own copy of Smart Search, and is going to have on department level a contest to have the best use case, an aspirational use case, more than what we can do right now, and to do the best demo. And why are we doing this? Because you don't know where really an interesting idea is going to come from. Our guys in finance, who are, more of an administrative role than a customer facing or an engineering role, may come up with the best use case that we need to build. So you have to listen to everybody, and especially the ones that are not in the specific domain that you're developing in, because those guys are stuck in a mindset. They're feature chasing, they get caught in the weeds, they're doing critical stuff, but it's very difficult for anyone to innovate when you're that close to the product.
I totally agree with you. I have my own life experience when I worked as UX designer with a team, and most of the ideas came from backend developer about user interface. And it was crazy because I am about user interface. I am UX designer. But that's told me that everybody in the team can provide great ideas, and it's very silly to limit them to their role and say, no, you're just about backend code that nobody sees. don't
Right.
look at UI or something like that.
And with AI, because we have programmed ourselves to interact with machines in this way that machines can understand, and it's subconscious, and we do it. You really almost need to go to children and ask them to play around with things, and to see what they're doing, because they're not brainwashed into limiting their behavior to keyboard and text.
And because when we are getting more experienced, we have knowledge about so many limitations. And I also see it in my management style. When people come to me with ideas, they say, "Okay, we tried this. We tried this. Didn't work. It didn't work." But you have to be open, because now new technology provides new opportunities. Maybe what didn't work years ago, now it will work, and
Mm-hmm.
society is easier to take
Yeah.
advantages of that.
Yeah. And also, in terms of AI and what is often called multimodal in AI, where not just images, but video, sound, maybe ultimately even smell can all come into the equation. That human machine interface, where we've got people with 25 years of human machine study and so forth, and they're still brainwashed into, okay, how can I reduce the number of mouse clicks? It's like, forget about mouse clicks. You're going to have a camera that you're interacting with in a in a real time way, and it'd be very difficult for the person that's got 25 years experience in reducing mouse clicks to rethink that human-machine interaction.
I think the main challenge here now in the era of AI is that's a mix of technology push, because we just have technology. We need to find new ways how to use it and what problems we can solve with this technology. Yes, and there is also a huge part of user research and changes of demography of user needs, because usually for product development we were checking what people need, what are the pains, and then we look for technologies that can solve the problem. But now it looks like new technology can change differently all the problems people have. Like there is like so many areas where you could look, like even if in e-commerce, yeah, you could target traffic acquisition, you can target how people search for the products, you can target reporting and insighting, because like whenever you look, if there is a human doing the job, usually AI can help improve the job.
If I go back in time, so when I was doing my PhD thesis, I was doing computer vision, and in particular, I was I was studying attention. And one of the things that I discovered, so I had a robot, and we were using hand gestures to interact with the robot, and would point to an object, and the robot would go and pick it up. But everyone was studying attention, because you didn't have enough computing power to process all information. So you need to have attention and reduce it. And what my thesis was really about was negative attention, that it was actually even easier to find all the boring stuff in the scene, the white wall behind you, the sky, the floor, and then remove all of that, and then only process what was remaining, possibly with a positive attention mechanism. But these very different concepts of interacting with in real time with vision, with somebody with a cell phone or with goggles, and being able to process what really matters to that individual with an attention mechanism or something like that, and to be able to bring that information back to them, is another area that is wide open right now. And there'll be huge innovations in the near future. And you need them in order to have everything from self-driving cars to robots that are walking around the shopping store and whatever, cleaning aisles.
So maybe a few words about how do you build your team to be innovative? Do you have any secrets? What do you look in people? Do you just hire smart people and then help them to build this visionary approach and develop the new skills they need? Or you usually just hire people who already have the skill set you need?
No, we like to build skills internally. I mean, you need to have senior people, and sometimes you don't have time to build that up internally and you're hiring them. But I find that straight out of college, 22, 23-year-old, that you've got a 40-year-old engineer with 8 or 9 20-something-year-old engineers working with them is a really great mix. I joke that if I don't have HR problems, then we're doing something wrong, which means that you got to have young people that goof around sometimes. And, we can bring a dog into the office and things like that. But although I spent a lot of time in university, I don't know that, especially with the pace for computer science, that is the best way to find the most skilled and innovative people, to look for a PhD and years of experience at IBM or something like that. So we like young people. We like to have teams that structure in, and this isn't really that unusual, but very agile and short sprint development cycles, so that we don't overinvest in one direction, but that we can constantly tweak. And we have to be ready to throw away a project if it's going in the wrong direction. And that's difficult, and you need to be able to have that level of objectivity. My first product, update engine, content management system I was building in the late 90s, I developed a language called Fuel, FatWire Update Engine Language, which was almost the exact same thing as JSP, Java Server Pages. It's just almost the exact same syntax, and it was a couple of years before. And then JSP came out, and I sat down with the engineering team. It's like, we got to throw away Fuel. but it's brilliant and they're just copying us and it works so well. Yeah, but Sun Microsystems is bigger than us. Everybody's going to do JSP. We're going to switch over to this other language. So you have to be willing to walk away from projects as well. And that's difficult to build inside of a team. But if you can get a team that also can be that objective, that's helpful.
Some of your products are very focused on interaction with users, and user experience is super important there. Maybe you can share your approach. How do you work with user research, and how do you build the team to be so successful building great products from user experience perspective?
Yeah. Well, one of the most important things is that you have to test your software with very inexperienced users. So, and you also need to think hard about user experience from day one. That can't be an aftermath, even though your architecture needs to be clean and headless and, separate content from presentation and so forth. If you're not thinking about the human machine interaction on day one, you'll end up painting yourself in a quarter. So what you do is find people that are similar to your end user that are very inexperienced and look at the mistakes that they're going to make and take those mistakes really seriously. The things that are just going to cause them to pause or ask a question or be confused. If you can't handle the easy stuff, then you're doing something wrong. And there's a quote that I love, which is from, I believe it's Mark Twain, which is, I would have wrote a shorter letter if I had more time. And it's completely analogous to that, which is that you need to simplify things, and that's hard. And you're not a big hero if you make something super complicated. You're a hero if you make something simple.
Yeah, that's interesting because you have a computer science background, but you still know about design. Yeah, and you know how important is that, because developers usually they tend to prioritize complexity, the code, the innovation, the new stuff, and how it looks like it's secondary because you can't be focused on everything. But that's nice.
Right. And I think that is a cultural problem in engineering often. And it's like hiding and creating this very sophisticated interface that no one can understand. And I use the term maintainability. And this is really more on a engineer to engineer basis. But if you can't walk away from that code set and have someone else pick it up, then the code set itself is too complex and needs to be simplified. And maybe it's as easy as having the proper documentation around it, but it's usually more that the consistency of the API and the intuitiveness of the method names that you use and the objects and so forth need to be really thought through. If you truly understand the abstractions at that level, it will be easy to use. But then you have to get to the next level where you're interacting with the real world, not the next engineer. And now it gets really hard. What's intuitive to the end user? What is their normal experience? What do they have conveniently available versus what they've got to go through hoops to access, right? If every time they want to buy something, they've got to type in their account number and routing number, well, nobody remembers what that is. And now you've got an interface that's just not usable.
Yep. Are you still involved in design decisions? You know that there are different approaches to that. Sometimes they say just hire smart people and tell them the end goal you want to have. And sometimes, like a CEO of Airbnb, he tells that he's always involved in this kind of decisions and works closely with design team. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's actually I find that you have to be very careful not to, as they say, suck all the air out of the room. The CEO walks in and he blurts out some idea of the day, and everybody's like, "Okay, we got to do that," right? So you have to be careful not to whimsically just drive people in a direction or to have a team that overemphasizes your own thoughts. I love design. I want to be involved, but I also know that if I just show up in the middle of the room, it's actually not functional. So I try to, at the very beginning stages, to provide a higher level direction and mentoring in terms of how to keep an open mind and to listen more than than talk when we're gathering information, and then get out of the way and let everybody do great things, and provide some feedback along the way.
How big is your design team?
So we've got 8 people in doing design, and then engineers, and then we also have a services team, which is very important, who are implementing the products that the engineering creates, and they're engineers as well. But that's a feedback loop that becomes very important, because if our customers have to spend a bunch of money to go live with one of our products, well, that's money that they could have saved and used to make their own site more successful, which would have made us more valuable to them. So we always have to reduce that cost and listen carefully to how long and how difficult it is to implement our own software.
Mm-hmm. And do you provide customizations for each client, or?
Yeah, so those customizations are coming from that services team. And so we recently released our Rapid UI feature. And what Rapid UI does is it takes most of the customizations that we implemented in 2022 and makes them out of the box, and moves from customization to configuration, is the terminology that we use. And that changes our mindset, because now, instead of us generating revenue with that, whatever, 20-person services organization through the initial implementation and configuration, instead, they need to say, all right, well, how do I add value after we're up and live? And it becomes perhaps strategic consulting, or more advanced fine tuning. And then we have to start putting ourselves in the mindset of the customer and thinking about real strategy rather than engineering in order to help them.
Mm-hmm. That's smart. In this case, you can focus on serving more clients too, because
Yes.
it's easier in this case.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
By the way, that relates to the engineering of a business model. And on the business model side, for SaaS software, one of the biggest challenges is customer acquisition cost relative to both the lifetime value of the software you sell and the cash flow of that software that you sell. And we seek to reduce the customer acquisition cost, as opposed to increasing we always want to increase lifetime value too, but first and foremost, reduce the customer acquisition costs. And the way to do that is to increase your total addressable market, to better differentiate against your core competitors, not necessarily all of them. And by making the most valuable features out of the box is a great way to reduce that customer acquisition cost. So that, in terms of prioritizing, what did the customer use the most in this product? Just through mouse clicks or support calls or CPU cycles? Great. Is there any costs or time in terms of launching that feature? Get it out of there, make that thing out of the box, and now you're providing value on day one, reducing CAC.
Regarding the portfolio of products, there are different strategies. Some people decide to build one product, focus solely on this product, and call it that's done. Yeah. And in your case, you have a portfolio of products. How did you decide that this is a correct strategy for your business?
Mm-hmm. Well, that relates to the architecture of our business model. So if our business model is to reduce customer acquisition costs on our side with the value proposition of increasing our customers' revenue, then the way that we do that is by having multiple products. We only need to have one customer acquisition cost. So that's external marketing spend, for example, and sales commission. And then with multiple products, we can, after we've won that customer without additional marketing spend, sell additional products into it. And in order to further optimize customer acquisition costs or license acquisition costs, we have created a product, eCommerce 360, which is a dashboard with AI in it that is able to analyze our customers' needs and recommend at the appropriate time in their own business cycle other products that we offer. So this is our number one salesperson, and it's one of our products. It's actually a product that we give for free, but now we've got portfolio products that all have the same value prop: increase our customers' revenue, We only need to actually sell one of them, and then that one with its eCommerce 360 dashboard will help sell the other ones and expand our revenue per customer.
You mentioned you were launching new version of your system. How did you approach the redesign of launch? Is it like gradual change that some clients will have, or like you will just sell it as a different version and new install, new integration?
Right.
How do you do it?
So we do both. But in this instance, it was more of a gradual change. By gradual change, not only am I talking about incremental feature sets or compatible feature sets, but also incremental and gradual pricing. So the pricing is, in this case for Zeus, for Smart Search, is 30% of what your pricing was for the search foundation, HawkSearch. Okay? So now we don't have to renegotiate. If you got a customer that has a huge license like Hewlett Packard or Caterpillar, great, it's 30% of that. And you've got a smaller company that has a small license, 30%. So the pricing becomes gradual. And in this case, all of the features are just enabled by paying for the license, inserting the license key or whatever, and they're turned on out of the box. That's not always the way that we approach it. It is what we did here, but sometimes you have a fundamental different value proposition. So our products fall into three categories. They increase the conversion of customers into buyers, they increase the traffic to your website, and they increase the average order value. And if with HawkSearch increasing conversion, we release a new version of WooRank or a similar traffic building product, in that case, it would be truly a completely independent one. So it depends on the value proposition as to whether you take an incremental or a non-incremental approach.
You mentioned that people should innovate as fast as that makes sense. In your experience, because there are some companies that like launch new features almost every week, and very often when I use this kind of product, I feel myself as a quality assurance engineer for them because I report bugs every week.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes they fix them, sometimes not. But yeah, but from your opinion, what is the correct pace of innovation?
Right.
Because that's not an easy question, perhaps.
Yeah. I think that releasing every week is usually too much. I mean, you can have incremental releases that just sort of slide in there, but in terms of something that could impact stability in a meaningful way, or is a feature that is apparent on the user dashboard, for example, that quarterly is probably as fast as you really want to move in that case. For something very small, it could be on a monthly basis, but by just slipping stuff in really small, very frequently, and potentially creating bugs like some companies have done, you could jeopardize your customers' reliability, confidence in you as a vendor. You can confuse them. You could invest in a product that they never notice or don't use because the first time they tried it, it wasn't mature yet, and they don't give it a second chance. So that becomes a little bit too frequent. But certainly in today's environment, it's not like every year we're going to have, version 19, on the 19th year, and version 20 and so forth. Those days are gone. And I think that a lot of times, especially in the SaaS environment, you should create small incremental approaches, at least quarterly, just to show that you're still investing in the product.
Do you believe in roadmaps? Because there are a lot of about that. Roadmaps are dead. You need to listen to the market every day and then react quickly, because if you have a roadmap, usually you will go in the wrong direction at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do believe in roadmaps. I also believe in tearing them up. But you need to have a vision, a compass to keep moving in, and you need to have that at different resolutions. So for Bridgeline, the top level for our roadmap is that we generate online revenue for our customers. There's a saying, CEOs worry about two things. We worry about revenue, and we worry about everything else. So we're helping our customers generate revenue. Then at the next level, we have three categories for improving revenue. We increase traffic to a website. We increase the conversion of that traffic into buyers. We increase the average order value. And then within conversion, for example, how are we focused on that? We're focused on discovery, helping customers find it. So this is a very high level sort of abstract roadmap. But then when you get down a little bit further, we know that in HawkSearch that we want to make in that instance quarterly releases for the next 3 releases for the rest of this year. We have specific things that are being worked on, that we have deadlines. Nothing ever gets done if you don't have a deadline. We have public commitments at the appropriate part of time. And then you have some flexibility within the team bandwidth. So I mentioned that, we have 8 people doing products, but we also have a larger engineering team. And those engineers will have things like refactoring. They know there's just some messy code in the background that they have to deal with. And you have to provide enough bandwidth and have enough confidence in them to allow them to also go back and add some of those to the exterior facing roadmap as well. But especially today, if you're not bold and can't, throw away a product or a roadmap and say, that someone passed us and we got to catch up over in this direction now, you're going to end up going off a cliff.
From my experience, sometimes it happens when you have a new product, you have the first few clients, and then they bring you the list of requirements. And if you are not smart enough, you just start adding all these requirements to your product, and at the end you limit yourself to a small amount of clients, and then you're just like a service provider for these 3 companies for whom you write the software. And did you have your own case when you had to say no for some feature requests from some clients because you would understand that this will change the product in a way you didn't want it to be changed?
Yeah. I think that for startup entrepreneurs, a best practice is to win a couple of customers with consulting, and eventually you'll see a pattern. They all need a similar thing, and you turn that into a product. All right. But then that leads to the next problem where the top 1 or 2 or 3 of those customers that are paying all of your checks are asking for features, and you have to do them, and you can't break away. And you can't just lose a big customer. That will take you into a very bad spot, and you will end up becoming just a service provider for those couple of customers. And the way to avoid that is to move up the food chain in those customers, try to get to higher executive level relationships, and to build a strategic relationship with them where they can understand and appreciate a longer term vision that you have for the company, and be able to tolerate hey, that's inconsistent with my with my vision for this business. Now, even when you do that, you'll run into instances where they say, well, it's inconsistent with your vision, but I need it, and I'm either moving to someone else or you're going to do it for me. And in those instances, it's like, okay, well, you got to pay for it, obviously, Mr. Customer, for me to add this to the roadmap now, and we are going to do that, and you charge for it, and you'll have to make concessions as you do in any relationship. But if you don't have a relationship with an executive, the lower level person's never going to understand your business objectives or give you any latitude to follow them, as opposed to what their fire of the day might be.
From your experience regarding product development, process research, what are the main differences from B2B development and B2C development? Because in B2C, usually you have to listen to users, but there is no one user will tell you what to do. You decide. But in B2B, as you mentioned, there are some cases when you still have to listen. How do you work with this kind of, what's the difference?
Yeah. Well, in the B2B world, you are actually speaking to a smaller number of customers that have a more structured set of needs, and it's a lot easier to build a spec sheet and to look for similarities. That's actually a lot easier. On the B2C side, you almost end up in a world of statistical analysis where you have to do a lot of multivariate testing. You've got to look at a lot of use cases. You have to search for the inexperienced user and really watch them carefully. It's a very different skill set, and you have to be much more open-minded in the B2C world. It's dangerous, the B2C world, because you can also, if you're not going to have enough time or money to evaluate thousands of users unless you're Apple, right? So you could end up being stuck in a cohort, not noticing it, and find yourself off in the wrong direction. B2C is harder in a lot of ways. People think it's easier because I can relate with it and so forth, but there's a lot of wrong directions that can be followed, and some luck will have to be found in order to survive sometimes.
Yeah, I heard that for many people it's more boring because business processes, deliveries, logistics, it's not fun, and everybody wants to build a new social media platform or new product that all their neighbors will use. And in this case, maybe it's a vanity metrics for people, but they want to build something that everybody uses. But ideally, the most unsolved problems are still in the area of business.
Right? Just imagine Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got hundreds of social media platforms at that time. And so there's a lot of luck that Facebook ended up being the one. Who would have guessed that by just having a like button rather than 2 or 3 different ways to react, that was the way to build subscribers? Incredibly difficult to analyze that. And you have to have the depth to fail and walk away from whatever Facebook 1.0 and try Facebook 2.0, because if you got all of your eggs in one basket, that's a tricky bet.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's super interesting chat. Maybe you want to touch some other topics, or because we are almost out of our time.
Well, I think that one of the topics that everyone needs to really watch for is different use cases for multimodal large language models. This is technology that is available for everybody. Hugging Face is a great marketplace, so to say, to be able to grab access to the different language models and to just play. You don't need to be a hardcore engineer with what the different capabilities are. What if I'm looking for matches to an image? What if I'm describing an image and want to create other images that are similar to my description and so forth? I have no idea what the great products are that are going to come out of it. No one does, but it's going to come from somebody that you don't expect. It's going to be just somebody goofing around, and then they invest some more time and turn it into a product. It's an exciting area.
It was nice hours spent together. I think we covered many questions, many topics regarding from building teams to the future of AI and how wonderful are our prospects for the future and how many new products could be built. Thank you for sharing your insights. It was very valuable, and it's super cool to see the person who is so savvy in technology, in business and user experience and all the other stuff. I think that's because you are in the industry for many years, from .com bubble times, I guess, but also because you're still curious and you still enjoy what you're doing. And that's a pleasure talking with people who enjoy what they're doing.
Well, thank you, Yuri. The pleasure has really been mine. This has been fantastic.
Thanks. Folks, I hope you're enjoying this podcast. It's brought to you by Seiden, a digital product design agency. We make products successful through design. If you'd like to join our podcast, want to build partnerships with us, join our team, or you have a design challenge, feel free to reach out to us.